Okay, hello and welcome. New episode of Bunker to Bunker podcast. Last week did not have a episode. I was traveling out seeing some friends. Did not have the time to recap St. Jude and kind of that epic finish, or almost an epic collapse by Hideki Matsuyama, which was a great ending to that tournament. But we're back this week recapping BMW Championship and getting into some President's Cup implications. We did a podcast either last month or maybe 2 months ago going over with Elise on Twitter about who we think at that point in August or July, who would be our captain's picks on the Team USA or the team or the international team. So at the end of the BMW, we already know the 6 automatic qualifiers for both teams. We'll play the Tour Championship this weekend, and then Captain Jim Furyk for Team USA, Captain Mike Weir for the international team. We'll announce their 6 captain's picks by Tuesday, September 3rd. Golf Twitter will be a lot of talking about, who should make the team, who shouldn't, what are some pairings, do they fit the course or not, especially for the international team, what Canadians make the team, because, Mike Weir, he's Canadian, tournament is in Canada, so I think there's 2 locks to make the team for the international side. I don't know what other Canadians might make the team. Some of them haven't really been informed the last month or so. We'll get briefly into that, and then we'll kind of go over some of quick predictions for the Tour Championship, and I'll actually be on the grounds on Wednesday. So that is a little bit of news. I'm flying out tomorrow night, recording this Sunday at 9:30 p.m. And yeah, going out to the Wednesday practice round. Going to be on site for the Creator Classic. We'll be seeing, Frankie, Riggs, Trent, shout out to Foreplay, doing their tee shots. I know Garrett Clark, Sean Walsh, Brad Dahlke, Fat Perez, Paige Sporan. Pretty quick episode. I'm going to jump in right now to Keegan Bradley. Won the BMW Championship at Castle Pines in Denver, Colorado. He has his first win of the 2024 season. His first win officially as the Ryder Cup captain for 2025 at Bethpage Black, and he's also a vice captain of this upcoming President's Cup, which we'll get into. It's his 3rd win over the last 2 years. He won the Zozo Championship in 2022, and then he won last year's Travelers Championships. Keegan has really had a lot of success at BMW Championships. He won the 2018 BMW Championship, which was, 20 minutes away from my house in Philadelphia at Aronimink, which will be the host of the 2026 PGA Championship, which would be pretty cool. So I think it's been just a crazy 2 years for Keegan over the last year or so, 2 years, whatever time frame you want. He goes from, winning the Zozo, winning the Travelers, basically telling everyone how much the Ryder Cup means to him. He hasn't opened his suitcase since they lost in Medina, and he shared his full experience on swing, not getting that captain's pick from Captain Zach Johnson. Then turn to this year, he shockingly gets the Ryder Cup captain that he didn't know he was even in consideration until he got that call from the PGA of America. And then he's also he's a vice captain of the President's Cup team, and now he wins this signature event, the second leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. He gets in, he was the 50th to get into the BMW Championship, so he was the last person in, and now he won. So I think that kind of shows you that anything can happen in these FedEx Cup playoffs. It's been a crazy 2 years for Keegan Bradley. Happy for him. I think he's one of the best dudes we have in golf. He's not shy to give his background and be very transparent with people on how he's feeling, what he thinks about this or that on tour, selections. He's pure class. So, great job. Congrats to Keegan Bradley. Was definitely cheering for him down the stretch as I caught the last couple of holes this afternoon. But I do want to make a point about the BMW BMW Championship. And I think it's one of my favorite tournaments that we have. And it's because they rotate the tournament every year. They predominantly try to go to the northeastern cities. Also has been to Chicago at Olympia Fields last year, Castle Pines, and Denver. So they are really embracing these big markets that we have. And I think that the tour, and I really hope the tour does this, I hope SSG does this, is that they emphasize going to these bigger cities, these bigger markets. Why can't we go to Philadelphia, Boston, New York? We're going to Washington, D.C. / Maryland, Caves Valley for next year. Go to Chicago. These are the northeast cities that aren't as hot as Atlanta next week, which is going to be a sweatshop. I was there last year. It's unbearable. St. Jude last week in Memphis was also a sweatshop. So I think why the BMW Championship is awesome, that they're embracing these big cities. I saw on the 18th green, people posting videos of these crowds. You saw the crowds around the green, in front of the green when Keegan won. And I think the more that we embrace these big cities, these big golf towns, the more that we can grow the game, get more people in front of golf, and get professional golf to where it should be. And I think that we're so caught up into the LIV, PIF, PGA Tour merger, and no one knows where this deal's at. We just heard that LIV and PIF signed a deal with CAA to represent them more for the TV rights and advertising, which CAA also helps that with the PGA Tour too. CAA is a sports agency, so I don't know where that deal's at, but the fans, as I keep pounding away, how every golf analyst is saying, the longer this goes on for, the fans are even bigger losers and more fans are going to be drawn away from it. And my friends have. They're kind of tired of this. All right, just tell me when LIV and the PGA Tour are going to merge. The sport is turning into 4 major sport, that the majors don't matter, kind of like tennis, only like the Grand Slams matter, and then like a couple other tournaments. I love golf. I tune in every day. Honestly, this is why I have this podcast. So I really hope that they embrace these big cities. I think it'll be a big test for Philadelphia, my hometown, for the Truist Championship, which used to be the Wells Fargo Championship, which is always hosted at Quail Hollow. However, Quail Hollow is hosting the PGA Championship for next year. So Truist picked Philadelphia Cricket Club to host the tournament. And I think it's going to sell. Philadelphia, underrated golf place. I think the Philly fans are going to show out. And I think it's going to be kind of a great warm-up for the PGA of America to see how that tournament is run. Fans, kind of how rowdy it is to prepare for Aronimink at the 2026 PGA Championships. I really hope that the tour down the line with scheduling to kind of embrace these bigger cities, because I think, for me as a golf fan, there's not much professional golf here, not much amateur golf, but these next couple of years, we're getting some big time tournaments, and I hope that just continues to happen on the PGA Tour. So kudos to the BMW Championship for doing this kind of rotation. It was awesome. Castle Pines, sick course. The altitude really tricked up some players. Scheffler didn't play great. Rory didn't play great. Xander was in the mix, but kind of faded. Wasn't really truly in contention that much. So round of applause to Castle Pines and the BMW Championship. And congrats to Keegan Bradley. So let's get into the meat of the podcast, and that's the President's Cup implications. I'm going to start with Team USA first. So the 6 official automatic qualifiers, which haven't really fluctuated too much in the recent weeks or months. It is no surprise Sky Scheffler finished number 1, Xander Schauffele number 2, Colin Morikawa number 3, Wyndham Clark number 4, Patrick Cantlay number 5, and 6, Sahith Theegala. So those are your 6 automatic qualifiers. The rest, other than the top 12, I'll say, is 7, Sam Burns. He actually moved up 4 spots. Tony Finau, number 8. Russell Henley, number 9. Keegan Bradley, vice captain, as I said, Number 10, Brian Harmon. Number 11, and Max Homa Spicy Meatball rounds out the top 12. So, since we are talking about Keegan, let's just get that conversation out of the way. Keegan is 10th in the standings, and he is a vice captain. He just won the BMW Championship. He's also the Ryder Cup captain, as we kind of went over. I believe Keegan deserves to be on this team. He's been playing great golf all year. Great long iron player. Loves team golf, obviously. Has a decent match play record. Outside the win this week, T2 at Charles Schwab. Played well at the majors, T22 at the Masters, T18 PGA Championship, T2 at the US Open. He missed a cut at the Open, which happens. So I think he's been very consistent this year. I think he's a guy that I think might help having him back on one of these team formats, even that he's playing. So, overall, I think if he doesn't win this, potentially he doesn't make the team, but the way that he played and him being a vice captain, also the way that he hits his irons, he's very consistent. He doesn't make many mistakes. He can get hot with his putter. I think Keegan Bradley will be a playing vice captain on this 2024 President's Cup team. I think the other locks are on this team is Sam Burns. He's played really well the last couple of months. He started off really strong to start the year, but he kind of faded a little bit. He had his best finish at the US Open, I believe, which was a T9, his first top 10, I believe, at a major. He finished T5 at St. Jude Championship, which honestly, if you watch that back or look back, he probably should have won that tournament. T10 at RBC Canadian Open, T15 Memorial, T13 Wells Fargo Championship. So, T3 at Phoenix, 10th at Pebble, T6 Amex, which he honestly should have won too. So, he's played well in these signature tournaments. People forget in 2022 at the President's Cup when Sam Burns was on that team, he carried Sky Scheffler, the number one player in the world. So, he played, I think he was probably a top 5 player on the Ryder Cup team last year, even though no one really played well outside of Homa and Brian Harmon. So I think, obviously, the boys club that everyone kind of jokes about, but I think Sam Burns these last couple of weeks have really given no choice that he's a lock to make this team. Will probably be paired with his best friend, Sky Scheffler. So I think Sam Burns is a lock to make this team. I think the next lock is Tony Finau. Last year wasn't the greatest year for Tony. He didn't make the Ryder Cup team, which I think if you, before the year last year, said who would make the Ryder Cup team, I think Tony would be on that list. But he's just been very consistent, and he's been gaining strokes with his irons. He's gained strokes with his irons in every tournament since the Wells Fargo in early May. So PGA Championship, T3 at the US Open, T8, T5 at Memorial and Travelers, and 3 straight top 16 finishes to end the year so far. So I think Tony, with his experience iron play, and something that has been honestly kind of surprising, that he's kind of figured out his putter. He did lose 6 strokes with his putter this week at BMW, but other than that, he's kind of figured that out, which has been what's been holding us back for the last couple months. So I think Tony, whether he's playing, and his experience will make this team. I also think Russell Henley, who everyone jokes about as being a top 10 player in the world according to the Data Golf, I think he's a lock to make this team. I think he sets up well with his course of being one of the best wedge players. He also doesn't hit it far at all, hits it straight, consistent iron player, great putter, can pop with his putter. So I think Henley, the way that he's played in these majors, 5th at the Open, T7 at the US Open, T23 PGA Championship, T38 at the Masters. So I think, he's very consistent, and I think he really fits well in match play. He kind of reminds me of like a Kevin Kisner type. Obviously, Kevin Kisner has more of that swagger and persona and personality out on the golf course. Henley is very even-keeled, kind of stays his own course, stays in his own lane, but I think Kisner and Henley are very similar, that they don't hit it far, but they hit it straight, great short games. I guess they did both go to Georgia, so I guess there's that connection between Kisner and Henley, but I think the way that Henley has played in these bigger tournaments, he's just so consistent that I think he should make his first President's Cup team, which leaves 2 spots, which I'll preface this in 2 different angles of kind of like what I would do if I was a captain and what I think Jim Furyk and his team will do. So, I think this next guy I would have on my team, I'm a little biased, but, I do believe Justin Thomas should make this team. He's a top 15 approach player this year. He's 10th from tee to green in 2024. He's been very, inconsistent. That's JT. However, you need to have a mix of guys who are very consistent, who don't make mistakes, and you have those guys who have a higher ceiling. And JT is that guy. He's a boomer bust guy at this point of where his game's at this year. He's struggling with his putter, his driver. His irons have been up and down over the last month. Great short game. At the end of the day, I think him being this leader that we all talk about, Zach Johnson famously said, you don't leave a guy like JT at home. JT's playing better, a lot better than last year. I think just on his play, he deserves to be in that consideration, but I think with his match play record, experience, and I think you do have to look at 2025. The international team has never won the President's Cup. We've only have tied once. So, most likely Team USA is going to beat the international team. We're that much more talented. But I think you do have to look at 2025, and I think you're going to want to have JT on that team. You're going to want him to play well. So I think giving him that boost of confidence that he made this President's Cup team, he's playing well, and hopefully that's that momentum kind of booster into the 2025 year to hopefully JT can just qualify on his own for the Ryder Cup and not have all this drama that will probably happen next year. Just based on how guys are playing, like Scheffler and Xander and Collin, it's only 6 automatic qualifiers. Keegan kind of rumored about potentially being 8 qualifiers or maybe 10 automatic qualifiers. So I'm not sure when that is going to be announced or if they're making that switch. But at the end of the day, JT's playing great, and I do believe he's going to make this team. He'll make my team, and my prediction for Jim Furyk is that they will also take Justin Thomas to make the President's Cup team. My last captain pick is one that I think either the guy that I would take on the team is different than what I think Jim Furyk and his team will go with. I'm going to go with who I think Jim Furyk will go with. And I think Billy Horschel will be the 12th man on this team. He made the team 2 years ago. He put Max Homa. He played decently well. Billy Horschel has that fiery to him. He cares. He is a great putter, even with that unorthodox kind of setup and shuffle to his ball. But, he's been playing great golf. He, over the last month, obviously T2 at the Open, T7 at Wyndham, T10 at the St. Jude. He won Punta Cana earlier in April, and then he played well at the PGA Championship, finishing T8. So he had his best major season of his career by far. His irons have been great. He hasn't lost strokes from approach since the Travelers. He makes a ton of putts. He has the experience that we've seen in these type of tournaments. He's fairly consistent too, as that's been very popular. He drives it straight, and I think his ability to pop with his putter is always great for match play. they always say in match play, like usually the first player who gets the ball in the hole first usually wins or at least ties. So I think Horschel sets up, and I think with his connections with Furyk, I think he also, not just Furyk, I think just with these committees and being 37 years old out on the PGA Tour, that I think Horschel, I can see that they want him out there more, have Horschel in that bright lights for the President's Cup. And I think Horschel is going to be someone that I think could be a President's Cup captain for the future, or even a vice captain. He's a great guy. We saw him with Aaron Rai at a couple of weeks ago, basically cheering him on. Aaron Rai has never won on the PGA Tour, and Aaron Rai was like, yeah, it was awesome to see that. Very heartwarming for Horschel to, keep rooting him on, which is kind of weird in golf that, a fellow competitor is basically helping you out. That's what makes golf kind of special. So I think that's what Billy Horschel. I think he'll be the captain's pick for Furyk and the rest of his squad. However, the guy I would take, and he hasn't played well the last couple of weeks, but when I did the pod with Elise about who we think should make it, I think this guy should make it. I think that was around the Rocket Mortgage, and so I guess maybe late June, early July was when we did that pod. But I think you got to look at the future. Team USA, we care about Ryder Cups way more than the President's Cup. That's just how it is, and I think a guy that could potentially make that team, give that last spot to someone who hasn't played on one of these teams, who's a young guy who, as I said, who has a chance, and I would take Akshay. Let Akshay Bhatia make this team. Not just I think he's deserved to put himself in that hat to be considered as the 12th man. He won his first tournament on the PGA Tour, or not PGA Tour, but I guess the biggest tournament of his career, the Valero Texas Open, which was back in early April, right before the Masters. After that kind of high of tournament, he kind of cooled off a little bit, but he played really well at the U.S. Open T16. Then he followed that up, Travelers T. Then should have won the Rocket Mortgage or even been in a playoff, T2 at Rocket Mortgage, T12 2 weeks ago at St. Jude, 45th at BMW, so not great, but he lost a lot of that on approach. But I think overall, the way that Akshay is an elite driver of the golf ball, very, very great iron player, top 20 on tour, has improved his putting so he can pop with his putter. I think, as I said before, we're always dominant in his President's Cup. I think this should be a bridge to the Ryder Cup, and I think Akshay is one of those guys that I think could potentially make the team come September of 2025. So I think Akshay, for me, he would make my team if Captain Josh, myself, was in Jim Furyk's shoes. I feel like they're going to go Billy Horschel in that spot and lean on that kind of veteran presence, and Horschel has been one of the, I'd probably say it's probably a top 5 or 6 golfer over the last month or so, or at least since the Open Championship. So, kind of to recap, my captain's picks would be Burns, Henley, Finau, Keegan, JT, and Akshay. So, I kind of want to leave some of the international talk. I wasn't able to kind of deep dive who I think would, my predictions on who would make that. I'll release that on Twitter, but just for the people who are out there who are still listening, the auto qualifiers for the international team is Hideki, Tom Kim, Sungjae, Jason Day, Adam Scott, and Benny On. I do believe that Corey Connors and Taylor Pendrith and Cam Davis are probably 3 locks to, make the team. Corey Connors, Pendrith, 2 very consistent, ball strikers. One this year is playing great, in his playoffs, and Cam Davis, has really gotten hot. He won the Rocket Mortgage for the second time of his career. So those are my top 8 on the top of my head. I haven't kind of dug deep into who I think, or maybe what other Canadians will, get in that top 12. I think Mike Weir will probably have another Canadian, if I had to guess. I think maybe one more, just that they've been struggling. for most of the year, besides like Nick Taylor. Hughes has played well. I think he could make it. Hadwin hasn't really done much, and Taylor won the Phoenix Open, and he won the RBC Canadian Open. So I'll dive deeper in after the Tour Championship. So, yeah, just wrapping up Tour Championship at Eastlake in Atlanta. They did some renovations to the course, so I think it's going to be kind of a newer course. Obviously, most likely Scheffler or Xander will win the FedEx Cup. I believe Scheffler, since he's number 1, starts at 10 under. Xander starts at 8 under. I think if this tournament was the same course, I haven't deep dived into what the changes were yet for Eastlake, but Xander has a great record at Eastlake, so I think if it was the same course as last year, Xander would be the bet to win in the market of with the stagger start and with just overall strokes without the stagger start. So I'm hoping for a good ending, because we've been debating Xander and Scheffler on this show and on Twitter and friends on like who's the player of the year or who's kind of, would you rather the 2 majors or the Masters, the Players, the gold medal, and a couple other signature events? Came out that, JT said that he'd probably rather have the 2 majors, and I think someone else might have said that too, but I think it'd be very fitting, and I know that PGA Tour is hoping that, it's a kind of a Xander-Scheffler duel. They've been pushing out a lot of content about Xander and Scheffler because they've been playing these first 2 rounds at St. Jude and the BMW together. So I think if we can get some sort of duel, I think it's very fitting to end with the 2 of the best players in the world to kind of end this Tour Championship. So I'll definitely have some boots on the grounds reports on Wednesday on who I think, who's playing well out there, who's not. I'll make sure to post some content about the Career Classic. Hopefully I can meet some cool people to hopefully have on this podcast. But it's going to be a very exciting weekend. Penn State football starts. Had a lot of fantasy football drafts, so President's Cup talk too in these next couple of weeks. So even though golf's kind of dying down, I think there's a lot of great storylines and to kind of see how this Creator Classic goes. So thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your bets this week, and make sure to tune into my Twitter on who's playing well at the Tour Championship, President's Run, and who's not. Thanks for watching.